Today I'm going to be taking you through a foundation level workout which will focus more on posture and alignment. So I'm going to get you started into standing, and I'm going to take your feet into what I call hip width apart. And just thinking about where your hip sockets sit, this is where I want you to be with your knees and your ankles, and not as wide as your pelvis. So bringing it all into alignment as if your legs are little tram tracks, and we keep them nice and parallel on their tram tracks. And from here I'm going to get you just to push your pelvis forward so your weight goes into your toes, and then push your pelvis backwards so your weight goes back into your heels. So we'll go forwards and backwards, and then I want you to find that nice mid position where your weight sits nice and equal between big toe, little toe and your heel, as though you're making a tripod with your feet. And then from here we're going to do some pelvic tilts. So we'll be rocking the pelvis forwards and backwards. Imagine that your pelvis is a bucket of water, and I'll just show you from the side. We're going to tip the bucket of water out at the front, and then we'll tip it out at the back. So you go both directions with your pelvis, going forwards and backwards. Now as you do this, just take a little checkpoint that your ribs don't move and that your knees don't move. So I don't want to be seeing them bending to take it out the back of the bucket, and then bending and ribs popping out to take the water out the front of the bucket. So we keep the ribs and the knees nice and still, and it's a tiny movement just from the pelvis. And then find a mid position, and with your mid position here, to find true neutral pelvic alignment, you want to find the bony bits on the front of the hips, and then if you take your thumbs around the back of the pelvis, you'll find some bony knobbly bits at the back of the pelvis. And these two bits should be level, so if you use a mirror at home, you can rotate and do your pelvic tilts again, and then find a point where these knobbly bits lie level, and that is your true pelvic neutral. And once you're in pelvic neutral, again you want to check that your weight's equal between your big toe, little toe and heel, so we're not leaning forwards into our toes or back into our heels. Then from here, once you've found pelvic neutral and your weight centered, I then want you to just think about lifting your collarbones up and your sternum up towards the ceiling. So you feel that you get this lovely expansion through your upper back. Now what you'll notice as you do this is that the ribs open and expand at the front. So now I want you to keep your collarbones lifted nice and high. So bring one hand onto the collarbones and then one hand onto the lower ribs. And on your next out breath, I want you to just allow the ribs to drop down without the collarbones following. So we keep lifted through the chest and then just drop the rib cage down. So now we've got a nice long upper back positioning, and you should feel that now you're here and you're centered. If you just do a few shoulder rolls around, it should just feel like it's nice and easy for your shoulders just to drop down towards the floor and just feel like your arms are dangling like a heavy weight. And then we'll do a few chin nods now. So I want you to drop the chin slightly down and then lift the chin up, and then just find somewhere in the middle where your chin is parallel to the floor, and just feel how easy it is for your ears to lie over the top of the shoulders, so your head isn't forwards in front of your body or back too much. So what I always want to look at I'll show you from the side with your chin positioning, is that the chin is level and that we've not brought the chin forwards or we've not tipped it up to bring it back. So keeping it level with the floor, the ears then just sit over the top of the shoulders. And then here you found your neutral postural alignment. So when we start with Pilates, we always try to set to this position here. So from here now we'll go into a roll down. So standing nice and tall, soft legs but they're nice and straight, weight is equal. We imagine we're stood against a wall, and I want you to now just peel from the crown of your head forwards, stretching through the back of the neck, and then imagine that you're taking one vertebrae at a time away from the wall. So you'll slowly start to round the shoulders and the upper back. The arms will then go down the legs and float forwards, so the arms are just dangling underneath your shoulders. And then continue to roll one vertebrae at a time. Take a quick peek at your pelvis and check that it's still in its neutral. So we're squeezing the bottom a little bit here and drawing up through the tummy muscles. And then once you've gone as far as you can with your spine forwards, allow your pelvis to rotate and send your tailbone up towards the ceiling. And you can just roll nice and heavy. Imagine that you're a rag doll and you're just letting all the muscles switch off and dangle towards the floor. So you can do a few yes and no movements with the head Just check the neck completely switches off, and then allow your arms to go floppy like a big pendulum here. So then we'll go into what I call pendulum swings. So pretending that you've got a little dog tail, we're going to wag our tail left and right. You'll send the pelvis around, swaying from left to right, and then the whole body will just follow. So again, arms and head nice and soft here. So you just get that pendulum motion rolling around from left to right. And then come back into the middle. Recheck that your weight is still centered into your feet. Your legs are straight, they don't need to be locked. And now we're going to squeeze the back of the legs and the bottom muscles. Imagine that you're tucking your tailbone underneath you now, so pull that tail that you're pulling down to the floor. Once the pelvis comes back, then just restack one vertebrae at a time all the way on top. You should feel once the pelvis is back, it's just easy for the rest of the spine to restack and come back to your neutral standing position. So again, checking your weight isn't into toes, it isn't into heels, it's right in the middle. Pelvis is in neutral, we've lifted our chest up, but our rib cage is dropped down, it isn't flaring out at the front. A couple of shoulder rolls here, so just take the shoulder blades all the way up towards your ears and then drop them down. Let them go nice and heavy, and then bringing your chin to your chest and slowly, one vertebra at a time, peeling your spine down to the floor. Imagine that your spine is like dinosaur spikes. I want you to open out every individual spike here, so taking your time, feel the stretch between every segment. Make sure your weight stays centered over your feet so you haven't pushed forwards into your toes or leant back into your heels. Once you go all the way down to the bottom position, just take a moment just to check that your neck is nice and relaxed. Take a deep breath in. As you breathe out, allow yourself to feel heavier. Take all the tension out of the spine. We'll go into your pendulum swings, so feeling like your arms and your head are nice and heavy. They're the pendulum ball. They'll just roll around from left to right as we sway our pelvis. And then come back into your center position. Hold it here. Recheck that you are centered between toes and heels. Squeeze your bottom muscles now. Push the tailbone down. Keep the spine curly and long. Draw the pelvis back underneath you using your bottom muscles. Once the pelvis comes back, then just feel how easy it is for the rest of the spine just to restack on top. When we get to the top, give your shoulders a nice roll around, so bringing the shoulder blades all the way up to your ears and then dropping them down nice and heavy. We'll go for one more roll down. So bringing your chin to your chest, feel the stretch through the back of the neck. Slowly start to glide your hands down your thighs. And then as you continue to roll, feel how the arms just float forwards and dangle underneath the shoulders. And again, we just slowly roll all the way down through our roll down movement into that bottom position. When you get to the bottom, you're still centered onto your feet. Your arms are nice and heavy, your neck is soft, you're dangling like a rag doll. And we'll go into those pendulum swings around to the sides again. And then very slowly bringing it back into center. We'll slowly start to curl back up now, tucking the tailbone underneath you, rolling back through the pelvis and restacking all the way into your tall position. And now I'm going to take you into some balance work. So you'll stand as if you're on a tight rope, and I want your toes pointing forwards and in alignment with your feet. Once you're here, recheck you're centered between front and back legs. So we'll rock your weight forwards and backwards and then just center yourself. Now I want you to go nice and soft into your ankles and your knees. You let them almost feel a bit like jelly consistency, so your ankles can wobble around. I want you to pretend as if you're wearing a belt and you're going to tie one more notch on the belt, so you get a very slight engagement of the abdominal muscles between your hips here. Glutes want to be gently engaged. You don't want to be clenching them, so they just want to be reactive really. And then allow your shoulders and your arms to relax. Shoulder blades go nice and heavy. We've got our chest lifted but our rib cage in, so we're not pushing our chest forwards. We keep the ribs down. We feel the neck is nice and long. Imagine that you've got hairs on the back of your neck just standing up. So you feel this length and this energy through the back of the neck, which makes you feel like you're growing through the crown of your head. Now, once you're here, I'm going to get you to close your eyes. This is where the challenge comes in. You'll feel your ankles working very hard. You'll be wobbling around, and you want to make sure that you still stay centered between your front and back leg, and that you're reactive through your upper body. Try and let your arms go nice and heavy so you're not using them for balance here. This should be a challenge. See if you can keep this. If you're struggling, you have a different option to take one foot outwards just a little bit, but in that alignment where your toes are pointing forward. This just widens your base of support so that it makes it a little bit easier. Otherwise, if you're feeling okay, you go back to being in that nice inline position with your feet. And then now we'll add an extra challenge in, so still keeping your eyes closed. You'll then bend into your knees and then rise back up. So this is a good challenge. This is also one you can do with your eyes open if you're struggling with eyes closed. What I want you to be feeling with this is as though you're in sinking sand, and that you sink down nice and soft into your knees and ankles. Then when you come to rise up, you squeeze the back of your legs and your bottom muscles as though you're pushing your way out of the sinking sand. So I want to feel the tension through the back of both legs, and almost the inner thighs connecting, like you're scissoring your legs as you squeeze back up to the top position. So taking your time, going down into the knees, and then rising back up, squeezing your way out. And then relax. We'll change over with your lead leg now. So swapping over your front and back leg. Once more, recenter yourself. So find the middle between front and back leg. Soft into the ankles. And then we've got that awareness. So we're drawing in through our tummy muscles just gently. We feel energy and length through our lower back. You're in your pelvic neutral. Ribs are down, but your sternum, your chest is lifted. Shoulders are relaxed, neck is nice and relaxed. Then when you're ready, if this feels okay, close your eyes. You've got your different variations. If you need to stagger your feet to widen your base of support, you're more than welcome to here. And then if this is feeling okay, we'll start to add in that rise and fall. So bend into your knees, soften into the ground, then squeeze the back of the legs and the inner thighs as you push your way up, as if you're pushing your way out of sinking sand, and then soften back into it again. See if you can keep your arms relaxed so there's no tension in them. And just as a guidance when you're doing this at home, if you're on a soft surface, so thick carpet or a thick squidgy mat, you will find this much harder than if you're on a firm surface like a hard floor, a tiled or a laminate floor. So taking your time as you do this, bending into the knees and then rising back out of it. If you want an extra challenge when you do this, you can stand on a cushion or a pillow and you'll find you'll have much less stability, so it'll give you a good challenge. So that's an alternative to having eyes closed, or you can even try being on a cushion with eyes closed, but that will be really tricky. Okay, we'll relax from there, from our balance. Now for the next movement we're going to go into, it's going to be footwork series. This is traditionally a reformer exercise, but it's a really lovely balance and core exercise when we do it in mat work. So you'll take your feet back into parallel position, so they are hip socket width apart. We'll reset into our tall posture and you pretend you're stood against a wall. From here, we're going to send our sitting bones down to our heels, keeping our back against this wall. So you imagine you're sliding your back down the wall. So as you bend into the knees, go as far as you can, keeping your heels down, get a stretch into the calves. We're in pelvic neutral and our pelvis, shoulders and head are against our imaginary wall. Float your arms up. Check the shoulders haven't picked up, so we've dropped the shoulder blades down. We're squeezing the armpits to the floor. And then when you're ready from here, we're going to keep our pelvic neutral, our back against the wall, and we're going to lift our heels up as high as you can. Then straighten the legs out and then lower the heels, lower the arms, and then we'll continue through that movement sequence. So bending into the knees, sliding down the imaginary wall of our back, float the arms up, shoulders are relaxed. Lift the heels up, then straighten the legs, and then lower the heels back down, lower the arms. Continue through this movement in your own time. So you've got quite a lot going on with this. It's quite a complex movement. So first thing I want you to think about is getting lots of ankle range. So go down as low as you can without the heels lifting. Then lift the heels as high as you can, and then continue, and making sure the ankles stay in alignment so the ankles point forward and they don't roll out to the side. So we keep that alignment as we go through. Thinking about is making sure we keep pelvis and spine in neutral. I'll show you from the sides. So making sure as we go down, we send sitting bones straight down to the floor, and regardless of what's happening with our ankles and our knees, we keep this straight back position. What you'll tend to want to do is either go back with the hips and forward the shoulders, so we make this zigzag alignment, but I don't want you to do that, so you're going to stay nice and straight. Then the other tendency we tend to have is, as we straighten our knees, is we tend to want to arch our back. So we want to keep that bucket position in neutral so we don't lose any water out of our bucket. So imagine your pelvis is that bucket of water, it's full to the brim, keep the water in the bucket the whole way through. And you'll find this is a really hard, challenging balance exercise and core exercise. So you need to be aware and switched on with your tummy muscles as you do this. So again, we'll go for one more here, and then we'll change direction, which for some reason just changes up and makes it a little bit more challenging. So we go up onto tiptoe, straight legs, take the arms around, circle them forwards, then bend into the knees, keep the heels lifted, lower the heels, lower the arms, and then come back through. So arms out, lift the tiptoes, bend into the knees, take the arms forwards as the heels roll down, bring the arms back through. The challenging bit here now is actually when we go from bent knees to lowering the heels, keep the pelvis still in its neutral. So think about that bucket of water analogy, and make sure as the heels lower down, we don't send the pelvis back and tip the water out through the front of the bucket. So you want to make sure you keep it spine and pelvis. And we'll go for one more in this direction. And then from here, relaxing. Okay, I'm going to take you onto your back for the next exercise here. So we'll go to the end of your mat here. I'm going to get you to cross one ankle over the knee, keep the toe over the cross leg, and then we're going to bend into a squat. We'll lift both heels up, go down, and then you'll go lower yourself all the way onto your bottom. Challenge for getting down onto the mat. So I would love for you to have a small head cushion or a folded towel behind your head. You'll hold onto the back of your legs and just roll all the way down into this supine position. Now I'm going to just reset through your alignment. So remembering our parallel lines with our legs, so ankles, knees and hips in alignment as if they're on little tram tracks. You've got that nice bend into the knees, about 90-degree bend here through the knees. Then I'm going to get you to set into a neutral pelvic position. So we'll rotate the pelvis forwards and backwards. So make a diamond shape with the hands, rest the fingertips onto the pubic bone, fingertips to the thumbs to the belly button. We will roll forwards and backwards as if I'm rolling a marble between my thumbs and my fingers. So just going both directions here. And have a little check as you do your pelvic tilts, what happens with your neck. If you're tight in your mid-back, you'll feel as you flatten your back, how you might feel a bit of strain in the neck here. So find your pelvic neutral where you're in the middle, your marble's in the center, and your hip bones and your pubic bone are level. So imagine you've got a builder's spirit level here and you've just centered yourself. You've got that natural curve in your lower back, and your lower back feels nice and soft here. Then just check that your shoulder blades are nice and relaxed into the mat, and the neck is at a nice length. So you want to make sure the chin is down just slightly as though you're holding an imaginary peach, and you maintain that. You'll just rest your arms by your sides with the shoulder blades heavy and the palms faced up. And then I want you to just now think about your breathing. So taking a nice deep breath in, wide into the back of the ribs. Feel if you can expand your ribs into the mat. And then breathing out, go heavy with those ribs and feel the front and the bottom of your ribs dropping down into the abdomen here. So breath in, nice and wide. And then breath out. Ribs sliding down. And as your ribs slide down into the abdomen, just check you don't hold any tension onto the front of your shoulders. So your shoulder blades stay relaxed and wide. One more time. And as you breathe out, drop the ribs down. Feel the pelvic floor lifting and engaging. And just keep this squeeze of all your core muscles. See if you can continue your breathing. Check that the neck is nice and soft. So we can do a couple of, and then come back into your mid position. Check the neck stays nice and soft. Shoulders are heavy, arms are relaxed. And also that your lower back stays nice and relaxed. So if it's tightening, just switch it off and go heavy. Then we're going to float one leg up to our single tabletop position. So bringing the knee up into that fold where we've got 90-degree angle at the hip and the knee. And then very slowly lower the leg back down. Feel this happening from your core. Feel the connection from what I call your imaginary springs from rib to hip. And then just changing over to the opposite leg. Now ideally I'd like you to keep this 90-degree bend at the knee and just fold back from the hips. So as you lower the leg down, just let the foot fall wherever it needs to fall with that 90-degree bend at the knee, and make sure the feet now start from there. So floating up one leg at a time, alternating still into tabletop. Feel the abdominals engaging as you lower the leg and check that the back stays nice and relaxed. Take any tension out of the back. Now I want you to have a little moment just to focus on your tailbone. So your tailbone is the bone bottom basically. Now as you shift from left to right leg, check that you don't shift your weight from one side of your tailbone to the other side of the tailbone. So you're keeping nice and centered. And the lower your leg gets as you lower it down, the more you should feel your abdominals, especially the lower abdominals, engaging here. Now we'll go up to double tabletop, one leg at a time. So floating one leg up to single tabletop, draw in a little bit tighter on the core, drop the ribs down just that little bit more. Then float your second leg to join you into double tabletop. And now we'll lower to toe tap. So breathing out as we lower the leg. Inhale, float the leg back up. And then now exhale, lower the leg down. So we're inhaling on the lift and we're exhaling on the lowering. So you'll go at the pace of your breathing with this exercise here. Now double check there's no tension into the shoulders or the neck. The neck is still nice and relaxed. The lower back is also nice and relaxed. If you're feeling your lower back doing the work, you can go into imprinted spine where we tilt the pelvis, flatten the lower back. So continuing at the pace of your breathing. And then now we'll just take it up a couple of notches and go straight into dead bugs here. So float the arms up, connect the shoulder blades heavy into the floor, so we'll reach up to the ceiling, widen the shoulder blades, and then relax the shoulder blades heavy. Now breathing out, we'll stretch one leg away and the opposite arm, and then draw it back into center. As you do this, you keep the shoulder blades away from the ears, so you squeeze your shoulder blades down to your back jeans pockets as you stretch the arm overhead. Now another thing I want you to think about is the stationary arm and leg. So I'm going to imagine I've got a giant beach ball between the hand and the knee that stay still. I'm going to squeeze my beach ball, so I'm pushing my hand to my knee. It's not physically moving, but I'm feeling like I'm pushing them together here. And then keeping that and then elongating the opposite shoulder and hip as we reach away. Now we can take it into a one leg stretch on the next one and work a little bit deeper into our core. So we're going to reach the fingertips and the toes away, stretch them and lower them, and then draw them back in. Now if you're in your neutral pelvic position, check your back isn't lifting more or it isn't working. It should be all in the core. Otherwise, if you're in an imprinted, you tuck the tailbone under, and now imagine that you're keeping a little pressure sensor pad underneath your low back and you maintain the pressure as you reach away. You should be working deep into your core with this exercise. We'll make it one more on each side. Last one. And then bring your knees into your chest. Give them a nice hug now. Just relax your back. Okay, I'd like to go into spine curl next. So you'll lower your feet down. You're still in your alignment, but we'll bend the heels up towards the bottom a little bit more, so you've got a bit more knee bend. Palms will face up with our shoulders and our arms relaxed into the mat. We've got a nice long neck. If you've got a thick cushion, please take it away and either have nothing or a flat cushion underneath your head, as we don't want to strain your neck now. With your spine curl, this is where we're going to peel our spine away from the mat. So you'll just do a couple of pelvic tilts. Just find that nice mid position, abdominal muscles. So we're going to pelvic tilt by drawing our lower abdomen muscles in by pulling pubic bone to navel. Feel the draw in through the tummy as you lengthen your lower back. Then when you're ready from there, you'll push down into your heels into the mat. Squeeze the bottom muscles and tuck the tailbone. Now with the tuck of the tailbone, I want you to slowly peel the tailbone away from the mat. And then one vertebra at a time, similar to when we do our roll down, I want you to now peel away from the mat. We're going to keep our abdomen still, and we're trying just to get the tuck of the tailbone. Then to lower back down, we drop our ribs back down, and then one vertebra at a time, I want you to lower down to the mat until your tailbone goes down, and then we relax into neutral position. So checking shoulders and neck stay nice and relaxed. Tuck the tailbone using lower abs, then squeeze the bottom, tuck even more, and then slowly push the pelvis up towards the ceiling, rolling one vertebra at a time all the way through to our nice spine curl position. Now melt the ribs back down, lower one vertebra at a time, keep the C-shaped curve so you're still tucking the tailbone under as you lower, because you want your lower back to go down before your pelvis. Then when you get back to the bottom, just relax into neutral. So in your own time, lifting again, you're going to tuck the tailbone under, push down into the heels, and then slowly, one vertebra at a time, rolling all the way through into the top of our spine curl. And then now, relaxing back down, one vertebra at a time, keep tummy muscles, keep lengthening our lower back. Once your lower back goes down, then allow the pelvis to go down, and then relax, reset. We'll go for two more here with our spine curl. As you're doing this, you have a few things to be checking. So making sure that your knees haven't gone towards each other or away from each other. So you're still in that alignment, ankles, knees and hips. You shouldn't feel your hamstrings cramping or tensing too much. The work should be happening from your bottom muscles mainly, and then your abdominal muscles. If you do feel like your hamstrings are working, you can either raise your feet up onto a step, or if you've got a block or anything that you can lift your feet onto, that will help take it off the hamstrings. Dig down into the heels also. Make sure you're clenching the bottom muscles as if you're squeezing your sitting bones together at the back to make sure that your bottom's doing as much work as possible. You also want to check that when you get to the top position that you don't flare the ribs. So we'll go for one more, an additional one. We'll roll all the way up and then keep your ribs down the whole way so your abdominals are working so we don't flare our ribs. So ribs always stay dropped down, shoulders nice and heavy. That's another watch point with your bridge. This is what makes it different from a normal bridge to a spine curl or Pilates bridge, is that we don't flare our ribs. Okay, relax from there. We're now going to roll to our side and go into a little bit of clamshell work. So, coming through to your side, I prefer to have my arm and then that folded towel or the flat cushion here. You'll drop your bottom shoulder now underneath the top shoulder, so slide your shoulder blade down to your back jeans pockets. You'll have your head in alignment with shoulders, bottom, and your heels, and your knees will bend forward just a little bit in front of you. Now stretch the top waist away, so we lengthen the top waist. which also means we lift our lower waist and create what I call this mouse house underneath you. You're going to maintain that. Then we're going to go into an imprinted spine position. So pretend we're lay against a wall. We're now going to tuck our tailbone under, pull the pubic bone up to navel, and then feel like you're imprinting your lower back against this imaginary wall. From here, keep the heels together, and now we're going to lift out with the top knee and then lower back down. So heels stay down for level 1 here with our clam exercise, and we make sure that as we're lifting the knee, we still keep pulling pubic bone to navel so we don't lose that imprint position, and also checking that the top hip doesn't roll back behind you. You don't necessarily want to do this against a wall, as you don't want to be pushing into the wall and relying on it. If you do, you can push the hips forwards and keep the hips forwards a little bit as you do the turnout. That will help get it into the bottom. So we squeeze our heels together when we get to the top of the movement. So here, squeeze the heels, squeeze the sitting bones, clench into the glutes. See if you can make your leg nice and heavy. Try not to tighten through the calf and the thigh. See if you can just get the work to happen just from the bottom muscles. Make sure that your neck and shoulders are nice and relaxed, so we're not holding any tension through the upper back as we do our clam exercise. Then we're going to go up into clam level 2 next. So this is where we lift both of our heels up and then squeeze out from there. So we push down into the bottom knee, squeeze our heels together. Check you've still got your mouse house, you've got your long waist, so you haven't taken your top hip up and flattened your lower waist. Heels are squeezing together. We clench the bottom muscles as we push out into our clam. You shouldn't feel this in your hip flexors. If you do, roll your hips forwards. That will help get it a little bit more into your glutes. Shoulders are relaxed, neck is nice and relaxed. We've still got our imprinted spine, so we're pulling pubic bone to navel. There's quite a lot going on with the clam exercise. It's quite complex, but when you're doing it right, you really do feel it. You should be getting a burn into the bottom muscles as you do this. So thigh is heavy and relaxed. Squeeze our sitting bones together as you turn out with the knee. I always like to imagine when you get to the top of the movement here, if you imagine that you've got a £50 note between your bottom muscles, I want you to think about keeping it there. So imagine someone trying to take it out and you're clenching and squeezing to keep it there. Now we're going to take it to clam level 3. So coming back down, lower back down. Keep the bottom leg on the mat, but float the top leg up to hip height. The whole leg lifts the knee and the ankle. And then you flop your foot onto an imaginary step. You keep it flopped there. Now we're going to turn out with the knee. So it's the same movement with the knee, but we're now floating our foot and keeping it as still as we can in mid-air, which is very difficult as we can't actually see it. So try not to lift it as you lift the knee. And then again, check we have a tilted position with our pelvis. So we're imprinted. Our pelvis is stacked and we're not rolling back. We have our little mouse house, and our neck and our shoulders are nice and relaxed in this position. You should feel that your leg gets heavier. It gets harder to turn the knee out, and that's a good sign. It means you're fatiguing your muscles and working through what I call your buns of steel. So still pushing out as much as you can, checking you're not arching your back to help, you're not using your hip flexors to help. Again, if you feel it on the front of the leg, check you've not, you roll your hips forwards actually if you feel it on the front of the leg, so you keep it all into the glutes. Another watch point here is that the knees are still stacked, so you haven't started to bring this knee forwards as you do your exercise. Let's go for 2 more squeezes here, and then relax. Well done. You can give it a pat and a rub here if you need to. Then we're going to change over to the other side. So, starting the same way, you lengthen your bottom arm out and bring your flat head cushion or a towel just in between your ear and your shoulder. Slide the bottom shoulder down and then lengthen the top waist away so we have our mouse house. We're in alignment with our head, shoulders, bottom and our heels. You can just lift your heels up to have a little look if you need to. And then from there, making sure you've got your imprinted spine. So we pull in the tummy muscles, tuck the tailbone underneath us, and then off we go with our clam level 1. So my neck and shoulders are relaxed here. My pelvis is stacked, it's in its tilted position, and I'm not rocking it back as I lift my knee up. I'm squeezing my bottom muscles to lift my knee, not tightening through the back or the side of my leg. So my leg wants to be nice and heavy, and I want to feel the work coming from my tush. Keep the heels squeezing together as you turn out. And then we just continue through this movement, nice and slow and controlled. If you start to feel your hip flexor wanting to work, you can roll your body forward a little bit. You'll feel a little bit more into your bottom muscles the more your hips are forwards. Keep tucking the tailbone under as much as you can, so you're tightening the abs, especially as you get to the top of the movement. Clench into those bottom muscles like we're keeping that 50-pound note there. Now we're going to lift both of our heels up and then continue from here. So we're keeping our mouse house. Shoulders and neck are nice and relaxed. Squeeze out with the knee as much as possible. Should be feeling the burn now, especially as it's your second side. You might even feel your lower glutes feeling the burn as well, as they've worked on the top side previously. We'll keep this going just for a couple more squeezes out. Really squeezing into the glutes, getting that range, push those hips, lift, and then lower down, and then we go into climb level 3. So bottom leg stays down, top leg floats up to hip height, foot flops onto the imaginary step. Keep the foot onto the imaginary step now as we do our turnouts. Double check we've got that imprinted spine. We've pulled pubic bone up to navel, we've got the tuck. We haven't brought this knee forwards, we're keeping it over the top of the downward knee. And then from here, just squeezing outwards from the bottom, making sure our foot stays nice and still and the leg's nice and heavy, so you don't want to feel like there's any tension into your calf or your toes. We've still got a relaxed neck and shoulders. We've still got our mouse house underneath us if you can. And getting that lovely squeeze out with the knee. Keep turning out. We'll go for 4 more. Take your time, nice and slow and controlled. Enjoy the burn. And then we can relax, give it a pat and a rub here if you need to. And then we'll roll onto our backs and go into some glute stretching. So from here, just go back through those pelvic tilts, find a neutral curve in your lower back, cross one ankle over the knee, and then you're going to pull a leg in towards you. So if you can, grab behind your thigh, so your hand will go through the middle of your legs. And then from there, we'll keep our pelvic neutral. So just do a couple of pelvic tilts, find that neutral position, and see if you can start to push a little bit more towards your tailbone. So you'll just intensify your glute stretch. And then just breathe and relax into it. Take all the tension out of the upper body. Let the neck go nice and relaxed. The head's just softened into your pillow. Shoulders should be nice and heavy. And then release, and we'll change to the other leg. So crossing the ankle over the knee, turn the knee out, grab behind the thigh, pull towards you, and then go for your pelvic tilts both ways. If you can get to a nice neutral position where you push towards the middle of your tailbone or towards your coccyx, you'll feel that intensify on the stretch. So you should just feel a little bit more stretch here. And then breathe, see if you can let your top body go nice and heavy. So ribs, shoulders, neck, nice and soft here. And then relax down, and then just bring both legs into your chest, cross your ankles, pull in, and then we'll just do a couple of rocks, left and right, just for a little mini massage over your pelvis and your lower back. And then release the legs down and relax. You're finished for today. Well done.